Take us live, Amanda, please. Okay, we're live. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have two bills to consider, but just a little change in what we do, but it's relatively common. Representative McGuire is going to, he's co-chair and he's going to chair this meeting. So, Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, if you please call the roll.
Okay, Representative Baker. Representative Brown.
Here.
Representative Burt.
Here.
Representative Henderson.
Here.
Vice Chair McGuire. Representative Obermuller.
Here.
Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Stivar is, and Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you very much. And Representative Baker is just walking in right now. So, all right, the first bill for our consideration is Senate File Number 41. Do we have someone to present the bill to us? Senator Cost. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. It's good to be here with you today to represent this bill. A little preface to it, I was asked by the dispatchers and the others that are working on this if I would consider bringing it forward, and at the time I didn't have a full slate of bills, so I said sure, I'd be more than happy to bring it forward for them. So they really composed it, worked on it with Department of Transportation and others, and so I'm reporting what we came up with to put together as a statute from that. So what this is Next Generation 911. What this is doing is setting up our statutes to better align with the new 911 program and the operative procedures federally so that they can be able to acquire grants from the federal departments. Right now, they don't have the right materials to be able to qualify for that, and this through the updating of the statutes, they'll be able to apply for those grants that they would not be able to apply for previously, which is really a big issue because it helps considerably with the cost of getting the new Next Generation 911 up and running. So if you go through it, first page is just talking about the title of it, and basically that's it, saying that it's Public Safety Commission's membership of the Public Safety Commission's Communications Commission, and they really have, if you look on page 2, the commission shall consist of, there's 3 things they needed to do. They first needed to talk to the commission about changing the board members from 11 to 13. What they're doing, the reason they're going with the PSCC is because by staying with that board, they don't have to fund a new board. They can stay with a board and it'll keep the cost down, and that's what they're trying to do, is keep the cost down. So they were accepted as members into there. They did go to the 13 voting members. You'll notice that on lines 10 through 12, the Director of Wyoming Department of Transportation or his designees shall serve as an ex officio. That was removed because the director said we've got representation in there, so there's no need for me to worry about that. And so he was in favor of that move. And so you'll notice down on 16 through 18, a member of the Wyoming chapter of the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, or the National Emergency Number Association, is what their membership is. And then if you go over to page 3, there are 3 things that they needed to do. First, they needed to have guidelines and standards for development, implementation, and operation of Next Generation 911 emergency communications. And that talks about it a little more down below on 21. Promulgate necessary rules and regulations governing Next Generation. And then they also needed to appoint somebody as a director, and the Highway Department did do that, and he is present today. The director is Troy Babbitt, that will be overseeing the 911 next generation, and that's been a great addition for them. There's also, if you look on page 4, funds collected from the 911 emergency tax imposed pursuant to this act shall be spent solely to pay for public safety answering points and service suppliers. There's no intent to, at this time, to raise that. They're not saying they want to up that fee or anything. Now, that's not to say down the road they wouldn't, but I can't answer that. I can only answer for their current position. And if you notice on page 5, this act would be effective as of July 1 of 2022. To kind of go over a few bullets with it, it updates our original 911, which is very antiquated and out of date. There's definite need to move up to better technology and all, and this will provide that for us. With the 911, the new generation 911, it's going to use state towers and cell towers. This is going to provide for a better triangulation of where people are calling from to have a quicker response and a more accurate location of where they are. We've had some situations up in the Bighorn Basin where they've got the road and the lane turned around, and so when they've called that in, it's been a delay to try to find out where the person was because it was turned around. So this new technology would correct that. Along with that, the new technology also can identify whether the number, because now you know numbers can be held from pretty much anywhere in the United States, so you've got numbers from all over. It can identify if they are actually addressed in the state of Wyoming or addressed out of the state. So that does make a difference there, so that they know exactly where these people are. Is this somebody in Wyoming that's calling, or are they calling from somewhere else? Because on the old 911, you might have a number that's coming in from Colorado or somewhere else, and so they're thinking that they need to send that notification to somebody in Colorado when that's really not the case. They can say, no, they're actually in Wyoming and this is the number that's coming from. So that's an advantage. They're updating federal rules and regulations, like I said, and that will allow them to apply for grants. Of course, they saved some money by joining with the PSCC for rulemaking authority and implementation. And so I think I pretty much covered that. If you'd like for Director Babbitt to come up and talk about that, you certainly could, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you may have or direct them to him if I can't answer them.
Thank you, Senator Cos, for that concise summary. Questions from the committee? Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, Senator, question, you mentioned something that piqued my interest. In the south central part of the state, historically, if you call for emergency services from a cell phone, and I'm talking about the Wamsutter area and south, you actually did have to tell them where you were, because sometimes you would, because of the tower situation, you would get a dispatcher in Colorado. Got one in Utah one time. And that, will this next generation 911 take care of that issue?
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Burkhart. I'm not going to be so bold as to step out on that. I will ask Director Babbitt if he can answer that, but at my recollection, I would say the odds are that with us being coupled with other states and all with the next generation, that it would be able to get the right people to the right place, but I would defer to him for that.
Good. Let's invite Director Babbitt up and we'll continue the questions. Director Babbitt, if you could address the good chairman's question. Thank you. And also if you'd introduce yourself for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification, Troy Babbitt, YDOT. I'm the Chief Technology Officer, and I'm the governor-appointed 911 coordinator. Director is in the audience here. But Mr. Chairman, Chairman Burkhart, to your question, that is the intent. With all the push and all the legislation that you're working on with broadband, it's critical that those service providers do have additional towers to pinpoint. To your point, as it is in Wyoming, sometimes it's lucky if an individual even hits one tower in a radius of 60 miles, so it could absolutely hit a Colorado PSAP. The intent on this would be, as it continues to grow with the industry, that there's additional towers so that you could triangulate to actually find out exactly where that person is. And that's the whole concept of the mobile phone technology and being able to pinpoint versus the old days of it was assigned with your house address for 911 services.
Thank you, Director. Further questions? Questions from other members of the committee? I will throw out a question for you, so I'm sure that it will come up and you may be the right person to address it. We have a very valuable system in WyoLink. Is this in any way, shape, or form going to compete with WyoLink?
Mr. Chairman, from my perspective, no. They complement each other tremendously. WyoLink is the radio system that all emergency users actually are on the system. And this is for the 911, the PSAPs, the public safety answering points, where the dispatch calls into to actually dispatch calls out for assistance out there.
Thank you, Director. Further questions? All right. Do we have any other directors of WYDOT or anybody else that would like to address the committee? If you would please introduce yourself for the record.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, Luke Reiner, Director WYDOT. Just maybe a couple comments from me. One, as I looked at this, certainly thank the bringer of the bill, and his explanation was right on. For me, the strategic importance of this bill is it sets the conditions for us to go forward in the next gen 911 space. And it does that two ways. One, by ensuring that we have the governance required to apply for federal grants and to receive the funding we need from in that space for next gen 911. And it adds the correct representation in terms of a 911 and an Office of Homeland Security rep to the governing commission to make sure that those interests are covered as the system's built out. And to me, that was what's important about this bill.
All right, thank you. Questions for the Director? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman. Director and/or any one of you three, one of the things that I look at is I brought a bill similar to this about 3, maybe even 4 years ago, expanding the 911 coordinator position. My question is, when we add these two people here, we're not putting it into effect until next July. I'm wondering if we made this effective immediately. And first question is do you have the budget to cover it, the $3,500? Could we cover it? And number two, would that be beneficial to bring these two voting members in immediately to start these discussions as opposed to waiting until July when they can become voting members?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Brown, I do think there would be benefit in that. Currently, there is nothing on the federal side of the fence available for grants at this point in time. There was the BBB, the Build Back Better, which is stalled in the Senate right now, which was going to apply approximately $10 billion to the 911 community. Rough estimates, Wyoming would possibly be eligible for $10 million on that. So I think it would be beneficial, absolutely, to get the conversation started. But if, from my perspective, since there's nothing pending at this point in time, it could.
Thank you. And that does raise a slight question, maybe a comment for me. It's going to be so important for us to be chasing those grants because as the least populated state, there's a lot of competition for those dollars. Hopefully the governor's office will be pursuing those rigorously. Any other questions from the committee? Yes, go ahead, please.
I have a follow-up question. I do just want to emphasize that to apply for federal grants, as the senator mentioned, it did require three components of this. States need to have a 911 coordinator, they need to have a state plan, and then this is the governance piece, from my perspective, the final piece of the puzzle that would allow us to apply for those grants and work with counties to get their systems upgraded.
All right, thank you. So I guess that goes back to Representative Brown's question. Should we make this effective immediately then to move that process along?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I would agree.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Do we have any members from the governor's office? Any other senators? My senator, I see, is in the back of the... We'll take public comment at this time, please. Looks like we have my former sheriff, Sheriff Odekoven. If you'd please identify yourself for the record and please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Byron Odekoven, the Executive Director of the Wyoming Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, rising in support of the bill. And thank you to the bringer of the bill for making it a very simple, straightforward discussion to, as Mr. Babbitt said, make the third leg of that stool viable so that we can participate in that federal grant opportunity. We think that is critically important since we are, as you mentioned, the least populated state, to be able to take advantage of those federal dollars that would become available only if we have the committee in place and the capacity to be able to receive those dollars. This would ensure that that would happen. To reinforce the answer for, does this compete with WyoLink? No. 911 brings us that call of distress that we then use WyoLink to proceed with that officer response. We don't share that common communication system, if you will, because the needs are entirely different. So no, we need 911 to be viable. We need WyoLink to be viable to cover both sides of that equation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Odekoven. Questions from the committee? Seeing, are there any other members of the public that would like to comment? Do we have anyone online that would like to comment? All right. I will close public comment at this time. Committee, what is your pleasure?
Second.
Moved by Representative O'Hearn, seconded by Representative Brown. Do we need to go through the bill page by page?
No, Mr. Chairman, no.
Then I would take us to the last page, page 5. Representative Brown, do you have an amendment?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'd move to amend page 5, section 2, and make this effective immediately.
And incorporate in the proper language of LSO.
Standard language, yep.
All right. Seconded by Representative O'Hearn. Question? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That amendment has passed. Any other comments or discussion on the bill? Representative Brown.
Just briefly, I'd like to thank Senator Koss for bringing this forward and Troy for working on this. Again, this was something that I felt pretty passionate about 3-4 years ago, getting us started with a 911 coordinator position. Director, I appreciate your work on this as well. This is critical, and Wyoming is unfortunately a little bit behind the 8 ball, so I appreciate us getting moved. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you, and I think that is, the entire committee feels the same way, so thank you for that. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Troy, a quick question for you. There's no appropriation in this bill, but there is a fiscal note. Can you absorb these costs within the system already?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we can.
Okay, thank you. You didn't have to come all the way up here for that, but I appreciate it.
All right, any further comments?
Question.
Question having been called. Madam Secretary, will you please read the roll?
Representative Baker. Representative Brown. Representative Burt. Representative Henderson. Vice Chairman McGuire. Representative Obermuller. Representative O'Hearn. Representative Stivar has submitted an absentee vote of aye. And Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes.
All right. So anybody other than Representative O'Hearn would like to manage? Oh, okay, this is going to be, we'll give it to him.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Senator, you have someone to floor manage this in the House? One of your co-sponsors, I take it?
Yes, it'll be Representative Newsom.
Okay,
Okay.
just wanted to make sure we didn't leave you hanging out there.
Unless, of course, you wanted to.
All right, thank you. We will give that to Representative Newsom. Next bill for our consideration is Senate File Number 92. And it looks like my senator is coming forward to present the bill. This is a good day, a banner day. If you would please introduce yourself for the record.
Good afternoon, Mr. Acting Chairman and Mr. Chairman, Committee. Good to be back on the road again. You ready for an explanation on Senate File 92?
Please proceed after you introduce yourself for the record.
Yeah, thank you. Senator Bill Landon, District 27, from Representative McGuire's neck of the woods. Mr. Chairman, Senate File 92 came to us really late in the game, and it was actually a heads up that we received from one of our congressional offices back on the Beltway. And it goes into the area of law where we give some special consideration to our military. When it comes time for them to renew a driver's license, we allow for the military to have some leeway there because they may be stationed overseas. And as a result of the Real ID Act, one of the requirements is you have to have a permanent residence here in the state of Wyoming to receive your driver's license. Well, we ran into a situation where we had a civil servant agreeing to serve overseas on behalf of the government and just ran into some difficulties renewing a driver's license. The original bill committee had identification cards in it as well. And the more we received testimony and talked about it on the Senate side, we determined, Mr. Chairman, that we did not need to include identification cards in this bill. So the bill in front of you today just simply goes into 31.7.119, paragraph C, and you can see the language where we allow for, we don't call them civil servants in our statutes. It says here that of a licensee employed by a federal, state, or local government agency, where the federal, state, or local government agency requires the licensee's physical presence, et cetera. So really what this does, Mr. Chairman, this little bill just simply says we're going to give some consideration to our civil servants out there across the world. What I chose to do when we drafted this bill, I allowed the department to come up with those rules and regs. I didn't feel like there was any reason for us to be deciding, the parameters of how we might go about doing this. So we leave that up to the department. You'll see that later on in the paragraph. That's really the bill, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to answer any questions. I think it works, and it may allow for somebody to have a little bit easier time to renew a driver's license.
Thank you, Senator. And just for the members of the committee, so if you look at that statute 31.7.119, the first portion of it, paragraph A, is licenses expire on our 5th year, on the birthday of our 5th year. The second portion of that is visual acuity and other additional tests. And then the third part, what we're talking about, is successive 5-year periods, renewal as being brought up in this, and exceptions for military service and things. So just to give people a little bit of a background. Members of the committee, are there any questions? Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So, Senator, Chairman, Section 2, Act effective September 1st, 2022. Was there any particular reason for that date rather than July 1st? And the original bill, I think, said effective immediately.
I'm going to rely on our department. I'm having a hard time remembering. Mr. Rossetti might be able to come up, Mr. Chairman. I think that what we were doing there is just trying to give enough time that they could work out the rules and regs, and they have to be posted. And we weren't in such a hurry that we didn't want to go through the normal rules process. But maybe Mr. Rossetti can help me out there.
All right, Mr. Rossetti, if you would just introduce yourself for the record, and if you can answer that question, please.
Taylor Rossetti, Support Services Administrator for WYDOT. Mr. Vice Chair, the senator's correct. As we talked about it, immediately would pose a problem that a rule couldn't be made. July 1 could potentially be pushing it, so we felt that September 1 would give us adequate time to make an adequate rule and make sure we had everything covered.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Questions from the committee? All right. Are there any further, I don't see any members of the governor's office or any other director or heads that would like to comment? All right. Anybody online? All right. With that, I will close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by Brown, seconded by Henderson. Would you like to go through the bill page by page?
Just did that.
Question having been called. Madam Secretary, if you will please call the roll.
Okay. Representative Baker? Representative Brown? Representative Burt? Representative Henderson? Vice Chairman McGuire? Representative Obermueller? Representative O'Hearn? Representative Stivars submitted an absentee vote of aye, and Chairman Burkhart.
Aye.
That's 9 ayes.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, as I'm a co-sponsor on this, and as Senator Landon said, it came in late, I'll floor manage this.
I guess that's a sure victory there for you, Senator, so.
I don't know, so.
Behind it, I'm telling you, I feel very comfortable. Thanks a lot, committee. Look forward to working with you guys next week and appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
And thank you, and thanks for your support of our armed service members specifically, and anybody else who this would apply to, so thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So for the committee, remember, tomorrow is the last day for interim topics, although as chairman, I have a lot of leeway. So if something comes up over the weekend you can think of, let me know. We have a number of topics. We probably won't get to all of them. We'll prioritize them next week on the 10th. It'll be a joint meeting, us and Senate. So just give those some thoughts. And that if you have any, get them in. And I've got multiple pages here. Gee, thanks.
It's just one.
Okay, it's one interim topic. All right. Okay, was this turned into
me, and I'm sponsoring it.
Okay, so, and you've given it to Clarissa Nord?
I have
or-
not, no.
Okay, give it to Clarissa, have her put it on the list if you would, please. Okay, I'm done.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yes, Representative Overmueller.
Just a process question. I went out and saw the interim form when you go out to the website and you just fill out this form and submit it. Is that the process we're using here, and does that make it complete?
Representative, yes. If anyone wants a printed copy, to just write it out, I have those on my desk. Come and get one. That's what I did. I can write a lot faster than I can type. So.
All right, thank you. Anything else?